I just got back from Gen Con. It was insane. I only actually got to play one game, but I was able to spend too much money picking up a bunch of rad tabletop role-playing games. Gen Con was so much fun. I spent most of my time hanging out with friends, walking around, grabbing food, and just talking about games. And while I did only play one game at the show, it was a really good one. My pal Ryan ran a group of us through a short adventure for his game Perils and Princesses. I've mentioned it before on the channel, but getting to play it with the creator felt extra special. It was a cursed pirate style adventure in this seaside cave, and my princess's gift was to speak and control rocks, so it was kind of like the perfect environment for a daring quest. I got to play with Destiny Howell, the writer of the Perils and Princess adventure Sweet Revenge, which I think is one of the best, most easy to run adventures ever. It's got a really great hook. There's this evil witch that has cursed the forest, turning everyone into candy monsters, and it's up to the princesses to figure out how to stop it. You know, there's a dragon, a rat king, a bunch of fairies, this chocolate knight is running around. Just really good, my kind of adventure. Emily Graymore was another player, and I grabbed her game, The Cunning Folk, from the Indie Press Revolution booth. That's always a must stop at Gen Con. Huge booth with tons and tons of games. But The Cunning Folk is a really fun looking game where you play as a little creature that causes all sorts of mischief. Well, I guess they don't necessarily have to be little. It's just that you're trying to not get caught, but the more mischief you cause to humans, the bigger your folk gets, expanding your dice pool, allowing you to cause even more trouble, but it also makes you easier to spot. There are some archetypes, kind of like classes, that have spells that your folk can use based on how much trouble they've caused, and there's some nice simple procedures in the back for creating your own adventure. It was really nice meeting Emily and Patrick, and I'm glad I got to play Perils and Princesses with them and pick up their game too. My other pal Michael from Night Noon Games got some zines made up. The Fungal Problem is a Shadow Dark dungeon we made with an audience live at Origins Game Fair last month. Game Festival, whatever. It was a really cool experience to have a bunch of people throwing out ideas and to see how quickly a fun dungeon can come together. It was so much fun. It might be an experience I try to replicate here on the channel, doing a live stream at some point. I also got to chat a little bit with Adam from Archon Games. They definitely had the coolest booth at the show. I wish I had footage of it. Basically, imagine this huge dark spire in the middle of the convention with stacks and stacks of board games all around it. Their system neutral adventure zines are really great. The Relic Bearer zine is an introduction to the Archon Games world. It's a history about the Dark One and these cults and the Inquisitions and corrupting relics. If Armageddon and demons and strange cults is your deal, you gotta check out these zines. The other ones are just straight up adventures. In Ferric Resonance, you play as these iron gatherers that kind of like wade through this wretched mire, poking at the ground, trying to find deposits of iron. And basically your group will discover this sunken treasure chest. Then stuff just starts to go very wrong. I love these zines, the artwork, the writing. It's like a complete vision of a setting that I just think is so cool. Another booth I was excited to visit at Gen Con was Need Games. They are an Italian publisher that put out my favorite book from last year's Gen Con, my favorite find, Terror Target Gemini, and this year they had a new game called Piaga 1348. As you can see, the illustrations and the design of this book is gorgeous. The concept of the game is the Black Plague has killed 1/3 of the population, but instead of just dying, they're rising up as zombies, and you play as a soldier of the Ordo Mortis, tasked with destroying the Revenant Plague. And the super neat thing about this game is there are no stats, no HP, any of that stuff. Your character sheet is just a list of abstract descriptions and questions you answer to just create this illuminated manuscript page of your soldier. And then as you play the game, any relevant information from your character sheet can be used to increase your dice pool when interesting stuff happens. Scenes play out super fast, and the entire game is just dripping with style. I love it when a game can be high concept matched with vibes and then melded together with like some really simple mechanics so you can just get in, get out, have the experience, and have some fun. Similarly, another game that has some very interesting mechanics is Thorn, the new Gila RPGs game. I'm a big fan of everything that Spencer Campbell makes, and this one is no exception. You play as Thorns, these masked adventurers searching the land of Oberon for ancient relics. There are no dice in this RPG. Instead, your character checks off an appropriate approach, which are kind of like ability scores in other games, but instead of rolling against it, you just mark off the approach that was called for. Like if you're using force to bust through a locked door, you just use up one of your force approaches, and then your character just does it. But maybe your Thorn doesn't want to use up all of their force early on in the adventure and decides to use focus instead. Since that wasn't the approach that was called for, but they still used the focus approach, they still complete what action they're trying to do, but they face a consequence at the same time. There are a bunch of cool classes, each with their own talents for outside of combat and tactics for combat that they can also use to tackle situations. And of course, there are a bunch of cool relics that can help too. I'm really curious how this one plays out at the table. One of my favorite things about Spencer's writing is that he's really clear about how his games are supposed to be played, and he describes Thorn as being a vibes-based game that encourages you to say yes often, so it totally sounds like my jam. I also traded some zines with Adam Vass and Will Jobst. Adam's new game is the New England Society for Paranormal Research. You play as operatives researching and confronting these like spooky demonic incursions. It uses playing cards to help build out the scenario cooperatively. I just think Adam is an awesome designer that makes extremely dark and thematic games, and I'm always excited to get whatever new thing he's making. I also grabbed Black Mass from Will, one of their older games that I didn't already have. I'm excited about this one because it seems like a really unique way of creating a story, this time with tarot cards. There are these two witches, Lydia and Catherine, and all of the players control these two characters together. You start by figuring out what kind of persona each witch has using the tarot cards, and then they go into the woods and have an adventure. Maybe adventure isn't the right word. They're like gathering requirements for their black mass. Then the game zooms out again, and everyone uses the tarot cards to collaboratively decide these two witches' fate. Super interesting, right? I think my wife is really gonna dig this one. And then speaking of card-based games, another one of my favorite publishers, Tyler Crumrine from Possible World Games, just put out 2 new card games. The first one is called Better Strangers, where you observe a person, real or fictional, and use cards to imagine who they could be. It seems like a very sweet and empathetic experience that I'm looking forward to trying out. The second game is called Tacklebox. It's a 2-player fishing game, kinda. It's almost like a LARP where you and your partner sit in your fishing boat slowly drawing cards that create a mysterious shared story. I just looked at a few cards because I don't want to spoil too much, but let's just say it's not a normal day of fishing. Things are gonna get really weird. I also picked up Orbital Blues. This is a Kickstarter that I missed, but when I saw the book in person, I had to grab it. And Orbital Blues is a space western RPG. Capitalism has failed, and there's a galactic frontier to explore. You've got a crew, a spaceship, and a soundtrack, some cool gears, some gambits, and you're rolling 2d6s against your stats. The book design is fantastic, and it reminds me of Morkborg or Cyborg, not in the tone, just in that the design really helps sell the tone the authors are going for. The book also has everything you need to run a full campaign or just the adventure in the back of the book. This is totally another one of those cases where I wish I had infinite time to play games, because I would 100% run a big adventure of Orbital Blues. Okay, some of the highlights of Gen Con were several really wonderful dinners I had. One with a bunch of people from Exalted Funeral who couldn't be cooler. I'm a big fan of Ben and James, the creator of Land of Eames, so getting to spend some time and hang out with those guys was super fun. But also Tiger Wizard, he hooked me up with a new postcard dungeon, Slime Skull Castle. If you're a fan of what I'm doing on Patreon, definitely check out Tiger Wizard on there and get a rad postcard in the mail each month. He handed me this one, and later on that night, I signed up for his Patreon right away. I also got to meet Indestructiboy at another dinner for the first time. We traded zines, and I actually have a little shipwreck map in this Wet Dreams one. Title aside, this is a really cool one-shot adventure for his game Vagabond. There's this disgruntled mermaid that wants to use this lighthouse on this island as like a kind of like a rocket to destroy a nearby town and take over the area. Great layout, lots of fun ideas in this one, and a really fantastic skull fungus map. If you're looking for a cool old school one shot, definitely check out just check out all of Indestructiboy's zines and Vagabond, all of its great stuff. I also had dinner with Chris McDowell. His new book, Mythic Bastion Land, is something else. There's a lot to say about this game, and if I have one regret about this Gen Con is that I had two chances to play Mythic Bastion Land, and I didn't get to. But I thought as I flip through this book, I want to tell you a little story that I think really encapsulates why Gen Con is so cool. So last Gen Con, I was at a big group dinner and just so happened to sit down next to Chris, and I was already a big fan of Into the Odd and Electric Bastion Land and was asking him what he was working on, and he told me about how he was in the middle of figuring out the layout of his new book, Mythic Bastion Land. He had just hired Johan Noor, the illustrator and layout artist for Morkborg, to do all the illustration and layout for Into the Odd Remastered. But for this new book, he wanted to give it a shot doing the layout himself. He seemed a little nervous, a little apprehensive about it, but also excited to tackle it himself. Flash forward a year later, I'm sitting across the table from Chris again, and this time I'm congratulating him on winning an Emmy Award for the layout design of Mythic Bastion Land. Now, disregarding all the name dropping I'm doing, the thing I love about Gen Con is getting to meet all these great creators who are just out there trying to figure out how to make these crazy games and adventures. And once a year, we all get to cram into an overcrowded convention, check in on each other, play some games, have some good meals, and hype each other up. You know, I got to pick up so many cool games and meet so many cool people working booths, people just walking down the street at my meetup. Thank you to everyone who came to the meetup. You all are the best. There's so many people I got to spend time with that I didn't even get to mention. I love you all. I'm just feeling so energized after this Gen Con. And even though it was an exhausting weekend, I couldn't feel more inspired and ready to make some fun TTRPG stuff. Definitely check out all the links in the description to where you can find all these rad books and games and adventures. If you'd like to support the channel, links to my stuff also in the description. I have a Patreon where I make monthly TTRPG zines and an online shop. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!
Anything going on?